Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Fiore Higgins, and welcome to one of our author interviews, talking to some of the authors from Stories from the Muses. As I'm sure you're probably aware, it's a wonderful compilation of works inspired by the muse level of the Jules Swale's method writing program. We have some fabulous authors here today. We have Linda Sandel-Pettit, Linda Pritchard, Mer Monson, and J.B. Hollows. Unfortunately, Rainu O'Connell and Sam Herman were unfortunately not able to join us today, but they are with us in spirit, certainly. So for all of you, if you haven't gotten your copy of Stories from the Muses, it is available on Amazon for purchase. And there's Jack, JB, proudly showing off hers. And if you've purchased it, and hopefully you will purchase it, we'd love to see reviews on Amazon. So please consider popping up a review on Amazon for us. Okay, so we're going to get started. And the first person I'd like to talk to is Linda Pritchard. Hello, Linda. How are you today?
I'm well.
Good. It's good to see you and be here with all of you. So I was really curious when I was perusing my copy of Stories from the Muses, I noticed that a lot of your pieces were infused with a fantasy component. And that was something new that I hadn't seen with the other authors. And I just wanted to explore a little bit and hear if that was new for you or if that's something that was brought on by studying the Muses.
I think it was really, I think at first, because the Muses is level 4. So that by that time in method writing, in going through the sessions, I started to get a sense of my own voice. And even in the first session, I really tapped into childhood in a way that I did not expect. And then I think by the time we got to level 4, the Muses brought out this place that I came from. In fact, every time in writing, going through one muse after the other, every week I thought, I'm going to write the child. I'm going to write the child. And every time on the page, the child became something totally different. She became wild. She became angry. And so she became Medusa, or she became the whore, or she became another, a different muse, a different voice coming from within. And actually, the child was the one that I wrote the absolute last. And that was the piece in the book that I think is the most fantasy inspired. And to answer that question in a bigger way, I don't know. It's a voice within that just started becoming real to me, I think, through doing the writing. And so now it's a place that I feel that I sometimes go to. But if you read the rest of my pieces in the book, you'll realize that there's a complete range between rage and joyous hopefulness. And that's one of the amazing things about method writing is it allows you to tap all of that within.
So out of curiosity, it sounds like you might have been surprised. Meaning you come down to start with a child, right? And I'm just thinking what we envision a child, and now you're talking about anger and this kind of frustration. What was that like for you?
It was strange because, we're to find the place in our bodies and select a muse every week. And so I would start writing and I would think I was writing the child. And yet somehow it would tap into some incident that was the information somehow that galvanized this other feeling that came through me. And I realized very quickly, oh no, this is, wow, this is not the child speaking. This is something very different. And then I went with that. I did not try to rewrite it, because why would you do that?
it's crazy to me because you're approaching a blank page to kind of be in community with yourself. And yet all these almost unexpected things reveal itself.
I know, that's the thrill. That's really the thrill of the writing, right? You cannot, because you cannot know every time you sit down and, you know, and tap in through doing the exercises, you discover something new. And it's just an amazing experience to have in the moment, hard as that is, but also to see later on the page what it's revealed to you. So
looking back now, after looking into all the different muses, what was the biggest surprise?
I think for me, the range of my writing, I think it expanded my range. I didn't realize that within me existed, you know, like these, like, I don't want to say characters because that makes it too much of a thing, but it existed in me the ability to write across so many different feelings, and I find this really hard to articulate. But I think it gave me more confidence about my ability to write, for certain, and interest, because I'm curious about that writer who writes fantasy. I'm curious about that writer, that voice who speaks with, you know, passion and rage. So it's just, it keeps you coming back to writing. I think that's just true for me.
And I feel like what I love to hear about this is not the first or second level. So the fact that someone who's been in this program for a couple of years now is still getting surprised and is still getting wowed with what is inside.
Yeah, it's because it's an exploration, and there's no end to it, really, as one, you know, just keeps taking another step and taking another step. And certainly in terms of the program, I think each level stretches you more and more. And so you can utilize what's come before to expand your ability to write and become a better writer.
And now that the muse level is behind you and you have studied since, have you seen these threads of fantasy kind of keep coming back? Or was that more of a when you were just focused on the muses?
No, it's truly like a voice within. And in fact, what I want to do is to get to that level where I'm ready to write a novel that is fantasy related, because I know there's a fantasy girl in there.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love that this level unearthed that for you.
It did, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
I'm going to move on to Mur. Hi, Mur.
Hey.
It's great to have you here.
I'm so honored to be able to sit with these awesome women.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here, certainly for me. What I wanted to talk about was your experience writing this book, because I believe this is the first time you've ever been published.
True story.
Yep, true story. And now we're in the after. We're in the after. So I'd love to get a little glimpse of your experience at the before and the during and the after. So it was actually, I was reflecting about this, which is just so crazy. It was about a year ago that we, you know, that everyone started, you know, getting together pieces. What was your thoughts then when you were first being, you know, considering being a part of this?
Oh, well, I think for many, 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 many years, long before I met Jules, I kind of knew this moment would come someday, somewhere in me. And I never expected it to show up like this. But the moment I was asked, it wasn't even a choice. It's like, of course I'm doing that, regardless of the fact that it terrified me. Like it was just a yes, I'm doing that. So I was pretty calm at that point. And then somewhere along the path, I started to freak myself out pretty good. Just because, up until method writing, I really, I loved being in control of my own story. I loved being in control of how it came out and how people heard it and what they heard. And method writing, like, you can't survive if you want to do it that way. You have to let go. You have to let go of telling any story the way that you want. And you have to, unedit yourself in that way. And particularly in the muse level, all the reins came off for me. I just let myself go there all the way and let it be told however it wanted to be told. And so to step into a space where anybody could see that was pretty terrifying. And also I knew that was awesome for me. That was exactly what I needed. So that terror, there was a pretty high wave of terror, which calmed about 2 days before the book was published and available. And then it was just over. It was like, well, it's too late now. It's out there. It feels good. It's going to be okay. I'll handle whatever comes. and it's been, it's been all good.
Oh, I love that. It sounds just the muse level itself kind of cracked open your reticence or reluctance.
Oh,
you
wow.
said you really went there. So the level in of itself was transformative too.
Absolutely. In fact, I think, if I remember right, I think it was The Huntress that I did first. And I wrote what I thought was a pretty cool piece. I brought it to class. I read it, and Jules immediately got in my face after I read it and said, you've got to quit dancing around what you're trying to say. You need to just come out and say it. And the moment she said that, I realized that's what I'd been doing for like 25 years. And I didn't know, it was right here, but I knew it was true. And I was so excited to see that and that I could stop. And so that it cracked on the very first one. And after that, it was like, okay, anything's fair game. Everything belongs. Anything can come out. And I don't have to dance around it. I get to just go there. And there's somewhere in me that loves to be blunt, despite all my conditioning not to be.
So then what changed, that anxiety that was building up until 2 days before? Because clearly you loved going there, I'm assuming, with your pieces, and you felt like you were really being open and honest and vulnerable. What then happened to cause the anxiety as you waited for publication day?
I have no idea. It just, I guess maybe somewhere in me, I knew that it was just a wave. And I finally hit the moment where I was ready to let it go. I guess, I don't know. I'm making all this up. I don't know. It was a very serene calm that came of it really is okay just to be me.
It is. And so what's it like now, 2 months out?
It's fun. It's fun to walk by my hutch and see that book sitting there that my name is on. And it's fun to talk about it, and it's fun to be asked about it. And that there are moments where I'm like, ooh, what if so-and-so reads it? Ooh, what if this person, there are moments like that, but they don't stick. They don't cling. And if anything, it's just given me more more juice for doing it more.
Mm. And I love how you acknowledge the fact that, you know, the voices will still come, but now it's just a matter of, you know, they don't stick.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Any surprises in terms of experiences that some of your readers have had?
I guess the only thing that occurs to me about that is, you know, everyone receives it where they're at.
Mm.
And some people resonate and some people don't. And some people like it and some people think, man, she's out there. And you know, I've just it's helped me, if anything, just to let go of how it's perceived and received. Like, you know, our words, our message, our presence, it finds who wants it, who needs it, who resonates with it. And that's not even our job to do that. Like, it's just our job to sit in what's present for us and take on the game of expressing it. And it really can be that clean and that simple.
I love that. It's like a generous offering with unattachment. It's there.
Yeah. I'm okay if you don't like it. In other words,
that.
And there's a bunch of freedom in that.
And I think that's a wonderful lesson to all artists and creatives. I love that. Thank you, Mer.
Thank you.
So JB Hollows, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Delighted to have you. So this is your second book that you've been featured in of one of the Jules's compilations. And I was curious because some people might not know, but you really are quite active on the back end piece in terms of the marketing and almost the business side of it. And so just curious if you could share with us a little bit of what the experience has been like for you to see that side of the publishing world.
Oh, yes. So a big surprise, actually. You've been asking about surprises, and it's a big surprise for me to find myself in this role. I've always said that I'm no good at sales and I'm no good at marketing and I'm no good at any of these things. So it just shows me that it's not just when we're writing and putting ourselves on the page that we're vulnerable. It's when we're showing up to do any of these things, because it feels like you're constantly being exposed. But in the case of both books, you know, I worked with a wonderful team, so that was wonderful. But it was also that it was just getting on with it, really. Like a job needed to be done, and it fell to me, and I got on with it. But what I was just reflecting when Mia was speaking is that there's a ballsiness that comes out when you have to get on with a job because other people are involved, compared to when it's just you know, just you marketing yourself. When other people are involved, there seems to be, that for me anyway, there was much more of a, well, I want this out in the world and I want people to know about this. So what's the best job I can do? And that has really helped me for myself. You know, so it came that way round. I didn't think that I would be able to market myself in a way that now doing the business end of the book really helped me to see, oh, there's just some tricks and tips in the trade that you can just do that help move things along. And along the journey, I read a book by Amanda Palmer about the art of asking. And I really feel now that the business end, the writing, the marketing, the production, it's all in service. It's all in service to the people that need to hear the message. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter if you're the person who binds the book. Actually, it's all in service, and it's all in service to the bigger picture and the bigger message. So I'm actually feel honored and thrilled that I was involved in that process, that I could be in service in that way.
It sounds like, you know, the fact that you were doing this offering, that kind of, to take from Mer's question, that kind of generous offering, it sounds like you were even more excited because you were doing it for others and not just yourself.
Yeah, for sure. That took my mind off any insecurities that I might have had around it being for me or about
Right.
me. So that helped to just, you know, get rid of that.
I love that. Isn't that just so ironic? What we always are willing to do, be for others and not ourselves.
Yeah.
I love that. Any things about the nuts and bolts of it that surprised you? Were there things that maybe you thought were a little more cut and dry that weren't?
Yeah. So the book of writing, sorry, the business end of writing, really surprised me with the first book, A Different Story. That what goes on behind the scenes was a real big surprise. The effort and the amount of time and the nuts and bolts, as you said, there's so many different factors at play. But I love being educated, so that surprised me, but educated me at the same time. And then with this second book, it's been much less scary and much more about utilizing the tools and techniques that are out there and seeing, you know, what can you learn that's out there that helps you showcase what you've got on offer. And so it's been quite a fun thing. I don't think you can ever, well, unless you got loads of money and famous, you can't ever book the algorithms, you know, to get your book to be in #1 and things like that. So we just played with it, and we've tried our best and worked hard at it, but you can't. Yeah, it's all surprising. It was all surprising.
It's just so fascinating to me that probably things like that are almost the antithesis of what we're doing, right? Linda Pritchard talked about that kind of awareness of all the different pieces inside you and that vulnerability. And yet there's probably a business side of it where you're trying to maximize on keywords or search engine optimization and stuff. But it's a necessary evil, I guess, in service to the message of the book.
Yeah, although I've come to see it as a game, really, as a way of just playing a different role, like the marketing muse, you know, or the business muse or something. What would your business muse say? And that's felt like much more of a way of embracing it, and also, and that came about because of helping others with the marketing side. So through helping others with the marketing side, I had to look at it as like, what are we really doing here? And what's it for? And what does it really mean? And actually, why shouldn't we just have fun? And then that helped me find my marketing muse, if you like.
I love the marketing muse. I love that. I love that.
She's a siren.
Is she? I was going to say, and I also love how your role really demonstrates the power of the collective and being part of a larger collective of creatives. And it's definitely getting me to think too about the importance of offering your art. You know, you obviously sounds like you kind of had to grease the wheel, if you will, because you were working for the team. But at the end, it's just, to Mer's part, we're offering it up without attachment. It's there, making it available, and have fun with it and play around with the algos and see what sticks and see what doesn't.
Yeah.
So I love that. Like, your marketing muse is a real creator. I mean, you've taken a role that could be a little bit stodgy and have made it into art.
Thank you.
And I love that.
I
But
was
it
really
comes-
surprised to be asked to do that role, actually. But I felt like, okay, well, this is the role that needs to be done, and nobody else wants to do it, so I'll get on with it, like making the tea, or whatever. That's sort of how I started to see it at first. Like, okay, and nobody wants to make the tea, I'll go make the tea. But then I started to find, like, oh, I can bring lemon cake with the tea, or I can serve the tea in china cups, or I can make the tea experience much nicer for the people around me. And that started to happen. And I just went with it. And interestingly, I mentioned to my son that I get asked to do marketing stuff for people. And he said, of course. I was like, but I what? And he said, of course you do. You're just really good at that. So it's really interesting that other people can see, again, to Mayor's point, other people can see beneath and through what you see about yourself.
And the generosity with which you did it, yes, you got on with it. No one else found, you did it. But then the knowledge you have attained that you have so generously shared with everyone else, and really have kind of demystified a lot of this publishing world.
Yeah.
That, the writing is part of it, but it's not all of it, as you know.
Yeah. I love that you've said that. I love that. I love that part. Yeah, that's the service part.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Love that. Well, thank you.
Okay.
And now we have Linda Pettit. Where are you, Linda? I have to find you. I have all these pins. Good to see you.
Hello.
It's nice to have you here with us.
Oh, it's a privilege to be here. Yeah.
So I had a question for you, because you are a spiritual leader, and curious about how your experiences in the muse level and the muse energies have enhanced your spiritual understanding as just a human.
Oh. How much time do we have?
We're going deep here.
I guess. Well, it's so curious to me to think about the oneness behind life, that there is this magical dream that's being expanded and created through all of us, and we just never know where it's going, and if we can find a way to just have fun along the ride, it's even the messy, difficult things start to reveal their beauty somehow. And I was thinking, something triggered a thought earlier about how if I were writing the Muses today, they would probably be different than they were when I was writing them a number of months ago, whenever that was, last year. And there was a context, there we had just experienced the George Floyd murder. There was tremendous upheaval around equal rights and the rights of women and diversity, and when I go back and I read my pieces in the book, I can see that the context, the dream that was evolving at the time was coming through my writing in a really, really incredible way. And there were things happening that I couldn't even know that they would have personal and impersonal significance. So for example, when I wrote the Divine Feminine piece, all I was doing was standing in front of my bathroom mirror in the morning, looking at my hair sticking in all different directions, and wearing my ratty old robe and kind of going. I remember something happened that I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, "Good morning, Divine Feminine." And then later I started writing the Divine Feminine piece. It just came out. But one of the lines that came through was a reference to Pippi Longstocking. And the line was something like, Pippi Longstocking hair all askew, and something about horse on her porch and no parents to tell her what to do. It was a kind of like a vixen-y sort of line. And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? Yeah, I read Pippi Longstocking when I was a kid, but I haven't thought about that in years, and yet it was so perfect. Well, then fast forwarding, I was recently in Sweden, in Stockholm, and was looking around for things to do in Stockholm, and discovered that Astrid Lindgren, who wrote Pippi Longstocking, was from Stockholm. And I would have gone to her house, which is now a museum, except that it was closed for renovation. But it made me explore her life. And I watched a documentary film, docudrama film, I guess, about her life called Becoming Astrid. And it was a beautiful story about a woman's journey in the 30s to find herself pregnant with a child out of wedlock, having to surrender the child into foster care, and being unable to care for the child at that time because she was so ostracized, and fighting her way back to a place where she could earn enough money to reclaim her child. And then the sensitivity that she had from that point to children and their experiences. And she's the 17th most translated women's author. And she's revered in Sweden. And she had such a message for me. I mean, I have I felt like enervated by the energy of her somehow. And so it's like, gosh, who could have known that sitting with that muse energy, seeing this line pour out, would then expand my life in so many different directions. And and the spirituality of that to me is that when I listen within, when I listen as an apprentice to the silence behind life, which I do when I'm writing, which all of us do when we're writing, and just really celebrate and go with what comes out, it just becomes to me, it just comes from and becomes part of some great evolving matrix that is evolving us forward in consciousness in ways that we can't fathom, and that often touch our readers in a way that we never will even know that they were touched. And so I think of writing as a spiritual practice for that reason.
I love that. And I'm even thinking, your two examples of, seeing yourself in the mirror when you got up in the morning. You've done that thousands of times in your life. But yet now, as you tapped into these energies, you saw a divine feminine. And as a child, you read Pippi Longstocking, but now everything is just more layered.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, so funny. I'm birthing a new website right now, and I'm working with a phenomenal designer and brand expert, a woman in South Africa. And she just out of a curiosity, I did a little self-test she had, just a little cute little thing in the form that sort of looks at how your energetics come through. And I came up as the rebel vixen. A rebel vixen. Whoa,
I love that.
that's pretty cool energy, right? And I didn't think about this until we got on this call and I was listening to everyone that, wow, the pieces that I wrote are all the rebel vixen, but coming through the unique energetics of the child and the energetics of the mother and the energetics of the seducer and the energetics of Medusa. And you know, it was like, when I think about that, I think, wow, what a beautiful thing method writing is. And these muses are, that they expand us, they evolve us, they allow us to amplify and give us the freedom to explore maybe sort of a central voice and a central energetics, a central sort of feeling that comes through the divine dream in us that then makes a contribution to the world that we can't even fathom. And it's all different. One of the things I love is, I think you all know, I've been going back and selecting out passages from different parts and people and posting them on Facebook. And it's kind of offered me an opportunity to get to know each of you as writers more deeply, because I'm reading with what really comes through to me, what really hits me, what really, and it's just been so beautiful to realize that there's kind of a central voice that comes through each author that's extraordinarily beautiful and yet nuanced by the muse energies. And I love that we all gave ourselves the freedom to explore that. And I've had a few people, not a huge number of people, but a few people reach out and say, wow, I love that piece. Or I've seen people on Facebook respond to comments that I posted of other, of quotes of other writers. Wow, that piece really touched me. It awoke something up in me. And it's just been a beautiful experience of seeing how our honesty and our generosity and our voices matter, and they change the world. They evolve consciousness forward in ways that sometimes we don't even know. And we just have to trust that. I trust that. I went from kind of being a little bit afraid about some of what I had put out there to just trusting that it was just divinely desired and perfect somehow.
I love this whole concept of taking the time for yourself for this discovery, and then how that pays it forward to the larger world. And that's really the community of just being human. I have a comment from you, from Karen, and celebrating the collaboration and for sharing so many beautiful snippets online and how they've been tantalizing gems for everyone. It's funny, when I just read the tantalizing gems, it almost, what I saw were like little seeds of everyone's wisdom that now you're going to see how they grow as people consume them. So thank you.
Well, I'm really all about celebrating the feminine energy, and I think the feminine energy is very expressive, and it's collaborative. I want nothing more than to lift up the other writers in the book as much as I want to promote my own writing. And because it's really beautiful, and because that comes from a feminine space, and because it's that feminine space to me that's going to transform this world.
Beautiful. Thank you, Linda. I have a question that came in for the other Linda. I shouldn't say other Linda, Linda Pritchard. So talking about going back to in the Muses, you absolutely, I think your experience really resonates with a lot of writers, because it sounds like you started with, I'm going to write the child this week. I'm going to write the child this week. Another muse came. So, is there anything for those in the audience who, are just in the beginning of their method writing journey? Is there anything you would have known that could have made it maybe a little easier, or not to say it wasn't easy, but would you have approached it a different way? Or any advice to those coming after you?
When I did the Muses, there was only one person who had done the Muses before me, and that was Maria Iliffe-Wood.
Oh, wow.
So, and I did them in my class alone. So there was I had no other reference point. And maybe that was good in some ways, because I didn't have any comparisons. It really wasn't, I wasn't partnered up with anyone, and 2 or 3 people doing the Muses that week. And I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was just completely exploring it kind of cold. And I don't think that's necessarily helpful for anyone. It's just was true for me. And I've thought about it since then. But I think we get to, with the Muses, you can easily end up trying to write a story, right? Trying to write a character. And so it is a challenge to leave that behind and just feel into what's true for you, which is one reason why, just for me, when I chose to write the child, that it gave way repeatedly to another muse, and that I was just willing to go with that. I wasn't trying to fix the fact that, this has gone off course. I'm now not writing the child. I just allowed it to be. And I think that was super helpful. And Jules never said anything, because I don't think I told anyone I was trying to write the child when I wrote Medusa, for instance. I just did it. So that's really the best that I can do in answering that question. Everyone finds their way through the Muses. For some people, it's harder. And just like Mur was saying, Jules said that thing after she read her Huntress piece. And it was that one thing she said in that moment that got her to realize, I can, pull the stops out. Why not? And then that changed everything for her.
Mm. And I really just want to acknowledge, to really be the first of your cohort to do it. What was that like? Because I feel like so many people in class, like you said, team up and compare notes and maybe call each other on the side and what's going on with you?
I think for me, because I did many of the levels by myself until Maria and I met up later, and then worked together, because she did the Muse level one more time. And then other people, of course, entered the group. So it was really interesting seeing people do the Muses behind me, and I learned a lot then. But I think because I've done so many things by myself, kind of pioneered so many things, that I didn't really think much about it. I just did what was asked, and that was that. Reminds
me of Get On With It, that J.B. Hollow said, right? Like,
yes,
that's the pioneer muse.
The pioneer muse.
Pioneer muse. I love that. I love that. Well, I have more questions. I wanted to see if anyone wants to ping Rhea with questions, but I could just keep going, because these are 4 amazingly interesting humans to talk to. What I'm really curious about, and I'll just keep going, and Maria, you'll let me know, is I want to know what's next for everyone in terms of, I know Linda mentioned fantasy novels. Does anyone else have a work in progress? And, I'd love for everyone just to take a minute or two to talk about what might be next for them in writing, in the creative space, in life. Does anyone feel called to grab this one first? Or
I'll jump in.
all right.
And because I want to start off just by saying I was a witness to your muse journey, Linda. I was in that class with you, and that was just pure pleasure.
Mm.
I mean, I can still remember some of those pieces. It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Yeah, it was 3 years. Yeah.
I certainly saw no inkling of you didn't know what you were doing. I was in awe.
Will
was-
you?
As far as where I'm playing now, I am just thoroughly loving the poetry pond at the moment, and working with a poetry editor. I would love to create a book of poetry. And then at one point, Jules invited me to print out everything that I had written, and it's a pretty hefty stack. And I think there's something in there. I don't know what it is yet, but I think there's something in there. But just beneath that, and from a larger lens, I find myself speaking to what Linda Pettit was speaking to, just falling in love with that game of what wants to happen next, what wants to be written about next, what wants to come out, how does it want to come out, and it's a voice that's always been there. It's just that game of learning to honor it, learning not to question it, learning not to get in its way, learning to fall in love with it, and enjoy the dance of that, whether it's making a beautiful meal or having another go at a poem. So that's the space I'm playing in at the moment.
I want to, is that like a pool I can jump into?
Oh yes.
I just want to live. I want to just live in that space. Is that like a room I can just like sit with you in?
Please, I would
mean,
love you.
Not only is the concept beautiful, but the way in which you articulate it, that's beautiful. Thank you, Mara.
Thanks, Jamie.
Who else? Because I know we have some projects in the midst to share.
I'll speak up.
I want to hear about your fantasy novel.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'm going to share is that I was ready to do that. And then Maria and Jules offered a manuscript writing course in the spring. And it was a 5-week intensive course. And I thought, oh, this is perfect timing. That was thought number one. And then thought number two was, well, I'm not going to write a novel in 5 weeks. But it was calling to me. And so I decided to leap into that. And I realized that I really wanted to set aside the novel writing because that's a bigger pond to play in than I was even thinking about until I kind of stepped into working on it. So what I did is I decided I would write something small that would be like a chapbook, and that actually it would be a perfect segue for me to kind of take a look at the writing that I've done, assess it, pull it together, which is what most of the people in the group were doing. They were taking their body of work and deciding the way that they wanted to present it out in the world. And so that was really fabulous. And it's led me, after the first session, Jules said, well, you're writing a memoir. And I thought, I'm writing a memoir? I don't write a memoir. I'm not a memoir person. But then as I thought about it, I realized that there was like a memoir within all of that work for 3 years. And so that now is what I'm working on. So that's the project that's coming before the next one. And I think it feels just right. So back to what everyone here has been saying, it's following the feeling and not being not overriding it with your own ideas.
Ego versus creative genius.
Right, versus creative genius, allowing it. Yeah.
I love that. I can't wait to hear more about your memoir. Okay, JB and Linda Pettit. Who's next?
I'll go as you said it in that order.
Okay.
So I just wanted to touch on the answer to the question about advice for anyone coming through. What came to me was the saying, another level, another devil. Right. The method writing program, every level is challenging. Every level stretches you. Every level shows you something you didn't know before. Every level has you, go into a depth that you weren't aware of. And every level has you looking over your previous work and going, oh, that was rubbish, I'm going to rewrite it. So it's really like, enjoy wherever you're at and embrace that, and know that when you do go to a next level, you're going to be learning again, because that's the whole point. And that's a segue to my body of work, manuscript, which has been 4 years in the making. So I had a great big pile of notes back in the day, just before I met Jules, and I thought I had a book. And then I there's a whole story about how I got involved with Jules, but I got involved with Jules very early days, so January 19, and then she came and I showed her my book, and very gently she helped me see that it was actually just a box of notes and that there was some way to go before it became a book. Anyway, I'm pleased to say that 4 years on, it is now a book, and it will be published later this year in October, God willing. And it is a non-creative, it is creative. It is a creative non-fiction. So it's part memoir, part journey in the prison system. I work in the prison system in my day job, and part stories about the transformations that I've seen in that system. And yeah, I'm really excited, and it's undergone many revisions, and it's getting ready, and I can feel it getting ready. It's being birthed, as Linda Pettit would say. I can feel that it's due. So it's not quite due yet, but it's really cooking well. So yeah, that's my next project. And exactly what the other girls have said is that I am loving being led by whatever the universe is telling me. That book went in the drawer for a period of time. It had to wait for a revelation for it to come out again. I had all sorts of ideas about what would be after that, but I've recognized I just need to shelve that. What will come after that will come when that's done, I guess. So thank you for asking.
That's so exciting. Congratulations. It'll be a big end of the year for you, to be sure.
Yeah.
And last but not least, excuse me, Linda Pettit, any projects you're working on?
Yeah, and I wanted to I loved what Linda and JB had to say about, both of them were talking about just how the process of what comes next takes exciting twists and turns. And sometimes where you start isn't where you land. And I just love that about this method writing journey. I know I had a conversation with JB when we were in Leeds about just the twists and turns her book took. And it was like, oh, wow, just trusting the creative genius it just makes for a wild ride. So I'm working on a memoir that I'm finishing this set of revisions on before it goes back to an editor, called Leaning into Curves. A Therapist's Rediscovery of Love and Wisdom. I'm told it's a hybrid memoir, personal development, spirituality book. And I'm birthing a program called the Writer's Sanctuary for very small group of women writers who really want to push the envelope and with each other engage in revision as a spiritual practice, collaborative editing, and just really encouraging each other to get themselves out there. So it's not really a class, it's not a program, it's an experimental laboratory, creative laboratory. I'm really excited about that. And then the third thing is in my own writing, I took the character class a few iterations ago. In character, for those of you who may not know what that is, you're starting to bridge into fiction writing by lying. And I discovered I loved lying. Giving the freedom and the license to just take one of my stories and then lie it into the stratosphere was amazing. And one of the pieces I wrote was about a woman in West Virginia who's being really tortured by a man. And so she chops him up and throws him in an outhouse to ferment. And I loved the character. I just loved how gutsy and Appalachian and strong and just raw honest she was. And so I've shared her with a number of people, and people have said, ooh, I want to know more about her. And so I have an idea about writing her story as a fiction novel, or writing a book called Appalachian Tales. I'm not sure, I'm just following that, but I'm taking the character class again because I want to circle back to that and really just really explore where that takes me. So that's really fun. I have no idea where that will land, but it's so satisfying to do it.
I love it. And I think you have really shown, not told, what being part of a collective like method writing. You know, we kicked off your question about being a spiritual leader and giving to humanity. And now you're talking about chopping up a man to bits and letting him ferment, which I really love that choice of words. That's really exciting. So congratulations on your upcoming book, but then, yeah, I kind of want to hear about that lady too, over in Appalachia.
Yeah.
So we are running out of time. There's one more question from Karen. So if everyone wouldn't mind just being patient, we might go over 2 minutes over, but for anyone to pop in, I love this question. So Karen says, I have a writer friend who does not believe in muses. Muses, schmoozes, she says, which I just love. So, you know, clearly, I think all of you have an understanding of the richness of the muses and what it can do for your writing. But do any of you have any friends who kind of don't believe in that energy? Have they read your work? Have you been able to make any headway in clarifying what the muse energy really means?
Well, I can jump in with a quick answer to that from my memoir, and the editor's comments on my memoir is that she made the comment. Now, she didn't know anything about muses. She's a corporate editor. And she said, oh my gosh, there were places in your writing where you were writing from the voice of the child. And then there were places where you went to writing about the child. When you were writing about the child, you lost me, or it was the energy was just much weaker. But when you were in that child, I could barely breathe. And so I think we do this naturally. And
you're showing, not telling. You're showing it.
Yeah.
You're showing it. And maybe that person might have said muses, schmoozes, but you showed it.
Yeah. And I realized that I now had a valuable tool to help me get in those energetics. That it was something I could deliberately, okay, so I'm writing about my maiden years now. What does the maiden muse have to say about that? What does the crone muse have to say about that? And so I practiced writing from those muses in those sections. Amazing what it did to the writing. So, yeah.
I love that. Anyone else have any muses, schmoozes? It's hard for me to say it in your life.
I'll jump in actually. I hadn't realized it, but when Linda just shared that, one of the comments back from my editor, a piece that I wrote as a 11-year-old girl, she actually said, "Oh, great 11-year-old voice." And I hadn't realized I'd done that, but I had rewritten that chapter after we did the Muses Smooses level, which should be its new name.
I love that.
I wanted to say as well that as probably I consider myself the least talented Muses writer, and that's because I really struggled, and the whole feel it in your body thing was really difficult for me, really, really difficult, and I can't remember where any of them were. But that didn't really matter because you just let it take over. And so when I stopped to concentrate, the first couple of Muses that I wrote, I couldn't find it. I was trying so hard. I wanted to speak to other people. But when I just let it take over, it wrote itself. And when I read my pieces earlier in readiness for this call, and when I read them, I thought, wow, where did that come from? You know, because they write themselves, whatever you want to call them. So that's my experience.
Awesome. Well, this has just been amazing. I want to thank all of the authors for being with us today. It's always such a pleasure to hold space with you guys. And I want to be in Murr's pool. I want to be in Linda's collective. I just want to be in these creative spaces with you people. The book is Stories from the Muses. It is on Amazon. We would love for you to buy a copy. JB Hollows is showcasing it again, excellent modeling, and also would love to hear feedback on Amazon reviews. We would love to have more, so please feel free to do that. And I thank all of you for being a part of it, and all of you authors for spending time with me.